Rachel Zegler tried to silence the backlash. She only made it louder. For months, the controversy surrounding Snow White had simmered online, an ongoing debate about remakes, representation, and a new direction of Disney classics. But when Zegler, the face of this much-debated film, finally spoke out again, she didn't extinguish the flames. She threw gasoline on them. In a now infamous video, she compared herself to the Winged Victory of Samothrace, a headless, armless statue that still draws thousands of admirers in the Louvre. Even in pieces, people still line up to see her, she said with a self-assured smile. The internet didn't see resilience. They saw arrogance. She wanted to set the record straight. Instead, she set the internet on fire. Rachel Zegler, the rising star once hailed as Hollywood's next golden girl, took to social media with what she thought would be a moment of vulnerability, a plea for understanding. What she didn't expect was for her words to become the gasoline that reignited a controversy already burning out of control. Within minutes, the video was clipped, dissected, and weaponized. TikTokers stitched it, YouTubers analyzed it, and Twitter, X, descended into full-blown chaos. What was meant to be a heartfelt defense turned into a moment of unintentional self-destruction. Within minutes, the clip spread across social media like wildfire. TikTok users spliced it into reaction videos, their stunned expressions mirroring the disbelief of thousands. On X, formerly Twitter, the memes arrived in droves, side-by-side images of the statue and Zegler, captions dripping with sarcasm. Some called it a desperate attempt to reclaim public favor. Others labeled it the final nail in Snow White's already shaky coffin. But what made this moment so explosive wasn't just the video itself. It was what it represented. It all started with a film that should have been a guaranteed success, Disney's live-action remake of Snow White. With a budget reportedly soaring past $250 million, it had all the makings of a blockbuster. But before the first frame even hit theaters, trouble was brewing. Rachel, cast as the iconic princess, was already facing criticism for comments she made during the film's press tour. Her dismissive remarks about the 1937 original, calling it weird and rolling her eyes at its classic love story, had set off alarm bells for nostalgic Disney fans. Then came her insistence that her Snow White wouldn't be saved by the prince, but would instead be a bold leader in her own right. A modern take? Perhaps. But to the internet, it was a slap in the face to Disney's legacy. By the time Rachel's now infamous video dropped, the audience had already turned against her. The backlash was swift, merciless, and devastating. Some mocked her dramatic monologue about being a cracked, yet still beloved statue, comparing herself to the Winged Victory of Samothrace. Others dissected her delivery, calling it insincere, performative, proof that she was out of touch with the very fans Disney needed to sell this film to. And the hashtag said it all. Hashtag Snowflop. Hashtag Not My Snow White. And the particularly brutal hashtag Zegler effect, a term used to describe a star whose own words doomed a project before it even had a chance to succeed. The internet's reaction, viral frenzy. The backlash was instantaneous. Within hours, hashtag Rachel Zegler and hashtag Snow White Disaster were trending, dominating social feeds worldwide. Influencers dissected her words, analysts debated the implications, and ordinary fans? They couldn't stop watching. Clips from old interviews resurfaced. The ones where Zegler had dismissed the original Snow White as outdated, saying the 1937 classic didn't sit right with her. The ones where she described the prince as a weird character who shouldn't have been in the movie. Those comments, once brushed off as another actor putting a modern spin on an old tale, now took on a new weight. Viewers saw them as evidence, stacking up like a case against her. And just like that, the internet turned her from a promising young starlet into a symbol of Hollywood's worst impulses, out of touch, entitled, and dismissive of beloved stories. The response wasn't just negative. It was mocking. Zegler had become a meme. One user posted, "Rachel Zegler, saying she's like a famous broken statue. Okay, Winged Victory. Let's see those box office numbers." Another quipped, "Even in pieces, people still line up to see her? Girl, they're barely lining up to see Snow White. And therein lay the biggest problem. It wasn't just Rachel Zegler who was under scrutiny. It was the film itself. The bigger picture, Snow White's box office disaster. As the dust settled from the box office disaster, the industry began to take notice. Rachel's name, once synonymous with fresh talent and boundless potential after West Side Story, was now whispered in backroom meetings with a different connotation. Was she still a bankable star? Could she lead a film without alienating audiences? The silence from her Hollywood peers was deafening. No major directors rushed to her defense. No fellow A-listers posted messages of support. Even her Snow White co-star Gal Gadot seemed distant. Her red carpet interactions with Rachel noticeably strained. Industry insiders began murmuring about her future. A future that, just a year ago, seemed paved with leading roles and high-profile projects. And then came the inevitable. Reports surfaced that Rachel was quietly being dropped from upcoming projects. A high-profile fantasy film? Canceled. Talks for a major franchise role? Stalled. While nothing was official, the writing was on the wall. Hollywood moves fast, and in an industry where perception is everything, Rachel had become radioactive. Not because of any scandalous wrongdoing, not because of a career-ending controversy, but because audiences had simply decided they didn't like her. And once that happens, the climb back up is steep, unforgiving, and often impossible. Disney had gambled big on this live-action remake, pouring millions into production and marketing. They had reimagined the story, rewritten the characters, and placed Zegler at the forefront of a campaign that should have reignited love for the classic tale. But instead of excitement, the movie faced months of bad press, questionable creative decisions, and a lead actress who alienated potential audiences with every viral soundbite. Then the numbers hit. Then came the numbers. When Snow White finally hit theaters, the result was catastrophic. A dismal $43 million domestic opening weekend, staggeringly low for a Disney tentpole. Comparisons to previous live-action remakes were unavoidable. The Little Mermaid, which had its own share of controversy, still managed to pull in nearly $95 million in its opening weekend. Beauty and the Beast, over $170 million. The message was clear. Audiences weren't just disinterested. They were actively rejecting this movie. And many blamed Rachel for it. Opening weekend was catastrophic. Industry analysts predicted a weak start, but reality was worse. Theaters reported near-empty seats. Social media buzz didn't translate to ticket sales, and audience reviews were lukewarm at best, scathing at worst. Even The Little Mermaid, despite its own share of controversy, had managed to pull in decent numbers. But Snow White? The numbers told a different story. One a movie that had failed to win over both die-hard Disney fans and casual viewers alike. Worse still, some theaters began pulling the film early, replacing it with safer, more profitable options. That wasn't just a bad sign. It was a death sentence. As the dust settled from the box office disaster, the industry began to take notice. Rachel's name, once synonymous with fresh talent and boundless potential after West Side Story, was now whispered in backroom meetings with a different connotation. Was she still a bankable star? Could she lead a film without alienating audiences? The silence from her Hollywood peers was deafening. No major directors rushed to her defense. No fellow A-listers posted messages of support. Even her Snow White co-star Gal Gadot seemed distant. Her red carpet interactions with Rachel noticeably strained. Industry insiders began murmuring about her future. A future that, just a year ago, seemed paved with leading roles and high-profile projects. And then came the inevitable. Reports surfaced that Rachel was quietly being dropped from upcoming projects. A high-profile fantasy film? Canceled. Talks for a major franchise role? Stalled. While nothing was official, the writing was on the wall. Hollywood moves fast, and in an industry where perception is everything, Rachel had become radioactive. Not because of any scandalous wrongdoing, not because of a career-ending controversy, but because audiences had simply decided they didn't like her. And once that happens, the climb back up is steep, unforgiving, and often impossible. Rachel Zegler may not be done in Hollywood just yet, but the lesson is clear. In the age of social media, a single misstep doesn't just lead to backlash. It can rewrite the trajectory of an entire career. Whether she can reclaim her narrative or whether Snow White will be remembered as the film that ended her ascent remains to be seen. But if there's one thing the internet has proven, it's that it never forgets. Hollywood's response. Where was the support? When a movie struggles, the industry usually rallies around it. Co-stars, directors, producers, someone steps up to defend it, to shift the narrative. But for Snow White, the silence was deafening. Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, had always been diplomatic when discussing the film. But at the Oscars, where she was spotted mingling with Hollywood elites, her body language spoke volumes. Photos showed her stiff, reserved when asked about the film, giving answers that were professional but distant. She wasn't defending Snow White or its star. She was distancing herself. And it wasn't just her. Industry insiders reported that Disney itself had begun quietly pivoting its marketing focus, shifting attention to other upcoming projects. Rachel Zegler was no longer the face of Disney's future. She was a liability. The career fallout, a star on the brink. Zegler's rise had been meteoric. From her breakthrough role in West Side Story to landing a lead role in a Disney classic, she was poised to be the industry's next big thing. But Hollywood is unforgiving. One bad film, one viral controversy, and that promising trajectory can turn into a freefall. Reports began circulating that certain studios were reconsidering her for upcoming projects. Casting directors, always wary of negative press, were hesitant. Was she too much of a risk? Too polarizing? Too unpredictable? In an industry where image is everything, Zegler's was rapidly deteriorating. The road to redemption. Can she turn around? Hollywood loves a comeback. But to stage one, a star has to make the right moves. Typically, there are two paths. The heartfelt apology. A genuine, carefully crafted statement addressing the backlash head-on, showing humility and self-awareness. The charismatic revival. A strategic reinvention, relying on likability and charm to shift public perception. But Rachel? She wasn't choosing either. Instead, she was doubling down. Her social media presence remained defiant. She pushed back against criticism, retweeting supporters, ignoring detractors, and carrying on as if nothing had changed. But something had changed, her standing in Hollywood. Final thought, the inevitable question. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next leading lady, the fresh face of a new era of live-action remakes. Instead, she has become one of its biggest cautionary tales. So the question remains, can she recover? Or has the damage been done?